I've been so frustrated over the weekend. And so I want to be sure that people understand, first of all, you've been taking the lead on this and doing great work at CAP. How can people follow that and tell us about that project of yours? Right.
Well, let me say a couple of things. So, I have been working on the gun issue for a long time, really since, not a long time, I guess, but became really plugged in the aftermath of the San Bernardino shooting, which was in December of 2015, where, I saw these lawmakers tweeting their thoughts and prayers for the gazillionth time this year, year. And I said, no, you're not going to pretend you care about mass shootings when just a couple of years ago you voted against background checks and sensible reforms, of course, in the aftermath of Newtown. And so I started calling them out, and that kind of got me into the movement. And so since then, I formed my own guns group called Guns Down. Folks can go to gunsdownamerica.org, gunsdownamerica.org to join that effort. But ever since we got going, Bill, we had started thinking about a lot of the corporations and companies that have special business relationships with the NRA. These are the car rental companies. These are some hotels. These are companies. Airlines like Delta and United, FedEx, and began running campaigns against those corporations, urging them to break ties with the gun lobby. Since the mass shooting, 2 weeks ago now, February 14th, we've seen just really an overwhelming wave of people across the country contacting these companies and telling them, if you continue doing business with the NRA, we are going to take our business elsewhere. And it's been remarkable to watch corporation after corporation walk away from the NRA.
I know.
Enterprise, Alamo, Budget, Wyndham. It's a long
Delta and
United.
Just
Chubb
yesterday.
Insurance, which provides insurance coverage for the NRA's Carry Guard product. It's a big moneymaker for them. It's a new insurance product they offer that allows people to shoot first and ask questions later. We can talk about that as well. But this is incredibly significant because the more you can delegitimize the gun lobby and break relationships that they use to entice new members, that they then use those membership dues to push forward their extremist political agenda, the more successful you're going to be in ultimately passing legislation in Capitol Hill. Because that's what this is about. This is about chipping away at the influence of the gun lobby bit by bit. And these corporations walking away is a very, very good step in the right direction.
The one question I had is, why were they giving deals to NRA members in the first place, right?
Because that's the membership inducement that they use. So if you when you join the NRA, you go to this page and it tells you kind of all of the benefits, and a lot of them are the benefits of going to shooting clubs and all of that.
Why should they?
But the other piece,
I just want to say,
discount.
Well, here's how it works. Let me tell you about these.
If you're going to buy anything from the Bill Press Show, we're going to charge NRA members more. That's what we should do. All right, that's what we should do. We're going to charge them like 20% more.
Right. Yeah.
Well, here, let me tell you how
be.
this business relationship works. And all of the different corporations may have different arrangements with the NRA, but typically what happens is the NRA pushes its 5 million members towards a particular business. So whether it be FedEx, which still has not broken ties with the NRA, we've been running that campaign for the last couple of years, but in the last couple of days, it's been incredibly concentrated. I've been pushing people to email the CEO of FedEx, Fred W. Smith.
Right.
And they've taken his email down now, so you can no longer email him because he's been bombarded. But there are other emails you can check out if you go to @Igor Volsky. I have the ways you can contact FedEx. But what typically happens, Bill, is the NRA pushes their members towards a particular business, let's say FedEx. FedEx likes that because they get the stream of new customers, and then they give some kind of percentage from the business that those customers do to the NRA. And so that's where you have that kind of loop, and that's where you have these corporations directly funding an organization that stands in the way of not only common sense reforms like background checks, which 94% of Americans want, but even the smallest little changes like raising the age for buying long guns and assault weapons, which of course without universal background checks doesn't really do anything at all, and it's just some kind of Band-Aid, but they oppose even that.
No, that's a crazy idea. I want to talk to you more about that.
You've talked so much, Igor, about the influence that the NRA has bought, and you've tweeted about this repeatedly when politicians say thoughts and prayers, right? And thoughts and prayers aren't going to do anything but giving that money back. And I thought that the CNN town hall last week, we sort of hit a critical moment in that movement of talking about the NRA, because a lot of times we talk about it here and it just feels like, yes, all Democrats and progressives that are in favor of sensible gun control, they understand the influence of the NRA. And not everybody does. But I thought there was a good moment, if I could play this audio, of Marco Rubio when he was asked by one of the students at the CNN town hall. And he says, Casey Caskey was the was the student who asked him, are you going to give back the, what is it, Igor, $3.3 million that he's gotten from the NRA? And Rubio would not answer.
People buy into my agenda. And I do support the Second Amendment. And I also support the right of you and everyone here to be able to go to school and be safe. And I do support any law that would keep guns out of the hands of a deranged killer. And that's why I support the things that I have stood for and fought for during my time there.
More NRA money?
That is the wrong way to look. First of all, the answer is people buy into my agenda.
You can say no.
Second, well, the influence of any group.
We're going to be here all night.
The influence of these groups comes not from money. The influence comes from the millions of people that agree with the agenda.
I thought that was such a powerful moment.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Weak-kneed Rubio. I mean, as somebody tweeted, I feel bad for the custodian who's going to have to clean up the spineless mess that he leaves everywhere he goes. But so two things about that. One is the choice of phrasing. Oh, people buy into my agenda. Probably not advisable, Marco Rubio.
Right. And not true either.
And number two, the problem is that this kind of money, both the direct contributions, the indirect spending, which is you combine those two, that's where you get the $3 million, but also the fear that Republican lawmakers have across this country that if they don't fall in line with the NRA will just run somebody against them and push them out of their seat. All of those factors lead these lawmakers, Rubio included, to not even consider real sensible reforms at all. And this idea that, Republicans always say, well, I support the Second Amendment. Well, newsflash, Mr. Rubio, this idea that the Second Amendment prevents any kind of gun reforms is absolute garbage, not just from, the 2008 Supreme Court decision, which found for the first time in America that you have a right to have a gun in the home. That was not even something that was considered back in the 1970s. That was an accepted idea, but because between the 1970s and 2008, the NRA really spent millions on scholars and research to push this idea that there's a right to private gun ownership. Did not exist before the 1970s in every single Supreme Court precedent until 2008, until that 5-4 decision in 2008. Only then did the Supreme Court find there's a right to private gun ownership. But in that decision, Justice Scalia, the late Scalia conservative justice who wrote the majority opinion, wrote that the government has incredible leeway in restricting gun ownership insofar as it improves the public benefit and public safety. So the notion that the Second Amendment somehow prohibits things like background checks is absolute garbage advanced by the NRA.
And there are, in fact, some limits even today that I guess the NRA won't touch, in terms of the famous one being a machine gun. I mean, there are
that's the point,
some
Bill.
limits already.
The machine guns are tightly regulated, according to a 1935 law. Tightly regulated. They're not banned. They're tightly regulated. And when was the last time you heard anybody use a machine gun to kill people? It would be incredibly efficient, but because, in the eyes of the killer, but because they're so hard to get, they're not used, which leads us to believe that gun restrictions work.
Right. The last one person, I guess, might have been the guy in Las Vegas. Didn't use a machine gun.
Did not use a machine gun. Had to use a modifier for that to achieve that, because he could not get a machine gun.
Okay. All right. So this is what really pissed me off this weekend, among many things, is the mainstream media saying Donald Trump willing to break with the NRA. Break with the NRA. And his big break with the NRA is that he says he would be open. He hasn't said it yet. Open to considering raising the age from 18 to 21. Yeah. Let me ask you, what good does that do?
That does, well, I mean, it might have some effect on the margins. It might block some young person from getting a firearm. I suppose there's some effect on the margin. But on the whole, in terms of reducing gun violence, it will do close to nothing, right? Yeah. For two reasons. One is the average mass shooter who commits these kinds of acts
37,
is 23, 35? I believe. So it's above the 20. It's older. Maybe it's older, but it's certainly above 21 years of age. Right. That's number one. And number two, as I referenced, because we have a huge loophole in this country that you could literally drive a Mack truck through that says, if you want to purchase a gun without any kind of background checks, without showing that you have any ability to use the gun or anything like that at all you have to do is arrange a private purchase on the internet where you will meet somebody for a brief second. You will hand them over a pile of cash. They will give you the gun, no questions asked. This idea of just increasing the age will have no impact because somebody could just go around that and get a private sale. You know, I was in Vegas a couple of weeks ago with Now This, and we shot a whole video where a member of our crew who was a big proponent of gun rights, so to say, and him and I had a conversation. He was like, "I do not believe that you could go on the internet and just find a gun and buy a gun, and that person will sell you a gun, no questions asked. I cannot believe that's true." So
guess what?
So I took him online. Yeah. He found a gun. We set up the he set up the sale. He bought the gun, and he was shocked how easy it was. A gun owner, how easy it was for him to just purchase a gun without any questions asked in this country, and that's in too many states right now.
Right. So I mean, as we were talking about this, it's not the age you buy it; it's what you're buying. It's the product that should not be for sale.
That's a product that's designed to kill people. That's the only reason it exists.
All right.